How's it going, guys? It's Rad, and welcome to a guide video, as I promised. Coming up, when I actually learned how to play this game a little bit, I promised a guide video, and to start doing guide videos again to help you guys kind of hop into the 6.0.3 or, Warlord Season 1 PvP. So yeah, the first guide I'll be doing is a Disc Priest guide. If you're not familiar, last season and last expansion rather, Holy Priest was the way to go, but nowadays it's Disc. With the whole, decreased crit and healing specs when it comes down to the overall, healing changes for PvP, Holy kind of relied on high crits with the Serenity Palm combo, and now that Prayer of Mending is not instant cast, it actually kind of dampers Holy a little bit. I wouldn't say it's completely non-viable, but Disc is definitely going to be easier to play when it comes down to actually, doing PvP. So yeah, today I'm going to be covering just the basics of a guide, just talking about talents, gearing slightly. Obviously I just hit 100 on this character, so I don't have the I guess gear appropriate, but I can be explaining exactly what pieces to pick up as you start gearing for the season that's coming up on December 1st. However, I'm going to be talking about talents and basic playstyle and rotation, basically everything you need to know to hop on a Disc Priest and be pretty adequate. So yeah, starting off into talents, obviously spec, you're gonna want to be Disc, simple. You get Holy Nova, Penance, Power Word, Shield, and Prayer of Healing. Pretty much the main abilities here that are worthwhile are Penance and Power Word, Shield. Holy Nova and Prayer of Healing are good, don't get me wrong, but the main abilities you are going to be using are Penance and Power Word, Shield, Holy Nova, and Prayer of Healing. So yeah, like I said, obviously Disc is known for using bubbles, if you're not familiar. Disc highly revolves around just using your Power Word Shield as a main source of obviously damage reduction. It's more of a damage reduction spec than anything when it comes down to it. It's all about reducing damage than actually healing. It does have some good abilities to pick up your health, but the actual healing the actual bubbles are where Disc shines. So when it comes down to talents, you're not going to be picking up Spectral Guys. It's just a good talent overall. Pretty much just a kind of like a bread and butter for priests right now. Spectral Guys is just too valuable to pass up. Angelic Feather is really good too. It did get nerfed by 20% since the last patch, I guess. But it's still good, still viable, 60% movement speed, which is what it was normally. So I definitely, it's still viable completely. It's got 3 stacks, it can speed up your teammates and help you get good positioning for your fears. After that, Surge of Light is definitely going to save you a lot of time. Instead of just spamming out flash heals, you'll get occasional procs of insta-casts, and that can overall save you time and keep your team on top of things. After that, Psychic Scream is pretty much where you don't want to be going. You can go Dominate Mind if you're planning on running 2s a lot, but Psychic Scream has always been, kind of the strong suit of priests. It's kind of changeable nowadays though, because Fear does DR with multiple things like Cyclone and some other CCs. However, so you might want to be changing it for Dominate Mind or Void Tendrils depending on who you're fighting, but if you're kind of just looking for something to just have there and not really worry too much, Psychic Scream is definitely going to be your baseline ability. After that, Spirit Shell, this is another really great ability. Basically, you pop it and you spam heal, like flash heals or whatever, flash heals or Prayer of Healing, like I explained earlier, and you can basically build up a shield here. This is really valuable for in the beginning of matches, putting shields on your teammates and then giving them feathers to rush in. They got 14 seconds of currently 100k shield, which is out of 160k HP, which will probably be around 250k in arena. They'll have a shield of about 60 to 80% of their maximum HP, which is extremely valuable. It basically allows you to sit and wait out CC and have them be fully shielded and fully guarded for a really long time. So definitely keep this in mind. It's a 1-minute cooldown. I highly recommend using it when you're in the position of power. You want to be pre-shielding your teammates when you expect damage to come onto them, or you expect to be CC'd, because the more shield they have, the less healing you actually have to do, and this overall will keep your team on top. So I highly recommend using this, not necessarily on cooldown, but whenever you feel it's a smart play, like I explained previously. After that, Divine Star is pretty much the way to go. It's always been, like I said, the baseline of priests, and generally just a good ability overall. The new 100 talent is kind of a toss-up right now. I think Words of Mending is a really good ability. Like I explained previously, Prayer of Mending is no longer insta-cast. You actually have to cast it for 1.45 seconds. But this new ability called Words of Mending basically allows you to get these stacks right here. You can see in the corner, Words of Mending. And whenever I build them up to 10, it instantly shoots out a free Prayer of Mending on my next ability. So you can see I'm going to cancel Prayer of Mending here. I cast a spell. It also puts Prayer of Mending on me. So this is really good for passively keeping your team topped with Prayer of Mending, bouncing your prayers around. And pretty much when you get to 10 heals, or like the 10 stack buff of this, your Prayer of Mending should be used up completely. So when it comes down to it, you're pretty much going to be always having a Prayer of Mending out in the battlefield, which is really good, and it saves you time from casting. So I definitely think this is good. A little tip I have for that ability is actually, if you want to build up stacks easier, when you're not, in a heavy battle situation where you need to be focusing on spamming heals, you can actually just run around with Holy Nova. This, if you can see right here, my mana is going down and going back up by the time I'm able to cast another global. So this is not going to put you at all, but it builds stacks of Word of Mending really quick. So this is just something you can spam when you're kind of, waiting. And it's insta-cast, like I said, you can move around, just kind of spam. It heals really not that much, but it's just a good ability to work on to actually build your Word of Mending stacks when you're not in a time of high pressure. That's just a little tip. You're probably going to see a lot of people doing that. It's also good for getting out rogues, but be careful, it can break CC. So moving on to Glyphs. Glyph of Penance is pretty much the most important glyph of a Disc Priest. Normally Penance is, you have to not move and cast, you have to actually stand still and cast it. But now with Glyph of Penance, it costs 20% more mana, but it is usable while moving, which obviously is worth the sacrifice of 25 or 20% more mana. Just because, say this is a pillar right here, it doesn't really do much justice, but I can cast Penance and go behind a pillar and still be casting it on my main target. This basically allows you to get heals out while being in LOS of your teammates and enemies. So this is extremely valuable when actually trying to stay offensive but also not get CC'd out in the open. So that's just a quick tip thing. Next is Glyph of Mass Dispel. Basically causes your Mass Dispel to be more potent. It's just improved Mass Dispel as last season, this season, last patch, everything. The next glyph is, I like to run Glyph of Reflective Shield. Basically causes 70% of the damage that is absorbed with the shield to be reflected. So when it comes down to like 70% of 30k, that's around like 21,000 that's going to be reflected. So this is just kind of passive damage that you can do. I've also seen a lot of people run Inquisitor, which basically makes your Power Word Soulless deal 25% more damage, but it deals 20% back to you. So it's basically, discs nowadays are kind of like a hybrid class, obviously primarily being healers, but they do have high opportunity to be dishing out some damage while you're on top as a team. And this is kind of where this bubbles come into play, because you can pre-bubble your team like I was talking about with the Spirit Shell, and then you can actually go out and just start spamming your Smite and your Holy Fire to get some pressure. You also have an ability that's a passive, pretty sure it's called Atonement here. So whenever you smite Holy Fire Penance or Power Word Solace or their multi-strikes, you basically instantly heal a teammate for 100% of that damage dealt. So Smite doesn't hit much in Arena, maybe around 8 to 10k, but this is just, again, all about passive healing, keeping your teammate topped while you're on top of the team. Disc Priests right now have a high potential for just keeping momentum with bubbles and quick little burst healing and high defensive abilities. Disc Priest can, keep your team on top of things while dishing out pretty substantial damage. I was running 2v2 skirmishes yesterday afternoon, and I actually was out DPSing the other damage, like the lower damage player on the enemy team. So just for like an example, me and my friend who's a feral, he would do probably 2 mil damage during the duration of maybe a 4-minute game. The enemy team would do probably substantially less, around 1 mil, with the lower player doing around 500k, and I would be actually on the leaderboards with around 700 to 800,000 damage just from Smite, Holy Fire, and Shadow Fiend. So it's just a high potential, like I said, for damage output. Disc is a really powerful class right now, and I really see it being pretty good for the at least beginning of the season. And maybe Holy will take over towards the end of Warlords, but right now I see Disc being really strong with the new Priest changes. I just want to talk about defensive abilities before I end the video. Priests have primarily 2 defensive abilities. If you don't count Spirit Shell, which I don't really count Spirit Shell, I count Spirit Shell more as offensive ability, but when it comes down to it, Disc has 2 special, I guess, defensive abilities of its own. The first one is Pain Suppression, which is an extremely powerful ability. They actually nerfed it. It's got an increased cooldown now, but it basically reduces all damage taken to a friendly unit or yourself by 40%. This is, powerful. 40% damage reduction is really good. The best part about this, however, is that it can be cast while stunned. So if you're in a bad spot, you don't have much HP or you don't have any shields on yourself, the Feral or the Rogue decides to swap on you, they get you in a full stun, you can cast Pain Suppression on yourself to kind of survive that quick swap, which sometimes could kill you. And honestly, it's powerful because of that. And the other main defensive ability that we have is Power Word Barrier. Basically another 3-minute cooldown, and it summons a Holy Barrier on the ground, reducing all damage taken to friendly units inside the barrier by 25%. While in there, the barrier, they can't be interrupted by damage. Well, spellcasting can't be interrupted by damage. So basically, there's no knockback on spells, which is okay. Most people are going to be kicking anyways, but it's basically just used for the 25% damage reduction. I use this after I use Pain Suppression. Pain Suppression's your main, go-to ability. However, if your teammate's taking some substantial damage and you're like, I don't know if I can heal through that, throw a bubble on him and then throw the Holy Word Barrier over by his area. If you can land both teammates inside the barrier, that's even better. And combined together with Pain Sup and Barrier, you can pretty much survive anything. But I highly recommend don't use them both at the same time. You want to kind of conserve your cooldowns, because if you're caught in a bad spot with no defensives, you can be a target. Another really good defensive play, just a quick tip for you guys before I end the video, is to use Spectral Guise. Spectral Guise is a really popular, like I said, ability. It's very strong. And you are pretty much invisible for, like I said, 6 seconds. So if you're, for instance, we'll have the pillar here, the metaphorical pillar. If I'm looping around the pillar and I Spectral Guise, my minions or my apparition is going to be right here. The enemy is obviously going to assume that I'm going to be looping around this way again. However, I highly recommend juking them out. So if you're going one direction, stop and go the other direction. So they're going to be continuing running this way, and this gives you time while invisible to run to a different pillar. And say that the pillar's over here and you can just sit over here. So they're going to be over there still, and I'm going to be at a different pillar without them noticing. So this is just some lower level like jukes. Obviously players at high level are going to know what you're going to do, but lower level play can, you can use this and abuse this mental mechanic, I guess. So I'll just show you guys here. I'm looping around, Spectral Guise, come back this way, and I'm out. See, it actually works. My guy's still over there. So using it also with the Angelic Feather is probably a must. A lot of people nowadays, use the Angelic Feather. Spectral Guise come in and then they fear. That's a good way to get fears off most of the time. However, people will expect this. Spectral Guise fear is kind of like the go-to for priests. So I would use Spectral Guise for juking rather than fears. Just going to macros real quick. There are already many macros that you kind of need for priests. Now that we have silence, you can just use a focus silence ability, which I don't have bound yet. But just a slash cast at focus silence, just for a quick focus silence. I use a buff ability, which basically buffs myself, so it's slash cast at player, Power Word Fortitude. So if I'm targeting a teammate who's like kind of out of range, and I can't buff them, it'll actually just buff myself. This is good if people are purging off your bubbles and you need to rebuff. Just to have another thing that they actually have to purge in between purging your barriers. So that's just a quick tip. And another really good ability is your self fear ward. This will basically just fear ward yourself whenever you press the button. I see a lot of people, or a lot of priests rather, in the beginning of games just fear warding themselves like a buff, and I'm just gonna go in and I'm gonna purge it off right away and just fear them on it. So I highly recommend using fear ward when you think right at that moment that you're gonna get feared. Don't use it in the beginning of the game. Conserve it for later dates. It's definitely, when used properly, an extremely powerful cooldown, and I highly recommend not abusing it. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed my priest guide. Honestly, it's just pretty basic. Disc is really easy to learn, really easy to master, really fun to play. It's got a high, like I said, damage potential, which makes it enjoyable in the arena. You're not just like sitting there healing all the time. You can actually be throwing out some pretty crazy damage, which will help your team. When played properly, it'll just keep good momentum and keep your team on top of things. So if you guys have any questions, just leave in the comment below. Hopefully you will be enjoying some of the guide videos I'm going to be throwing out here. And yeah, if you have any suggestions for the next class or guide video, I do have to level my characters to 100 before I can do a proper guide on them, but I can definitely work on classes you guys would like to see. So let me know, and I'll check you later. Peace.